So today we are going to talk about people pleasing, what it is, why people do it, and how to kind of implement strategies and systems to become conscious of it, and then maybe to help change like the behavior patterns behind it. So I'm going to start with a pretty loaded question. What is people pleasing and why do people do it?
So people pleasing is like taking the path of least resistance, I see it as. So it'll be somebody who will want to avoid conflict or avoid offending others or practiced and in the habit of putting other people's needs before their own. Now, the reason somebody would do that and would become patterned or trained in doing that from an early age is generally because of safety, because it feels like a safe way to behave. If you reliably put other people's needs first, you are going to be unlikely to upset somebody. So, a child who grows up in an environment with parents who have stronger needs or bigger needs than the child, so where the child isn't really being that, where the family is kind of in a place of not being child led or not being child focused, then the child or children will take the path of least resistance around their needs, which is to not ask for too much. So they might find that the voice they don't voice what they need through maybe there having been a bad reaction to that, and that will have happened over and over. So it'll be a combination of things that where the parent hasn't encouraged the child to have a voice and to say what they need, and at the same time the child may have tried to practice that and they've met with a negative consequence. Um, if a child grows up around an angry parent, they'll know that they will have worked really hard to understand what triggers that parent and then how to avoid that from happening. And then to be compliant is a really safe way in that situation to avoid an angry parent. So
Okay.
that's where it tends to take hold um, in early life, and then it becomes a patterned behavior. So then there will often be anxiety for people to prioritize their own needs. So they won't ever feel comfortable at prioritizing their own needs. It's always safer and there's more ease with prioritizing somebody else's needs. So it can look like, do you want to come and do this thing? You're getting an invite to do something with somebody? The internal response will be not really. I know I'm going to be exhausted on that day at that time, or I've already got other things that I will probably have to do on that day. But instead of responding to that internal voice and need, we automatically say yes. Yes, I'll be able to do that. And that is we'll find that people who do that will have said yes before they've even thought through properly whether or not they can really do it. So it's a very automatic response.
Okay.
Um, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it comes from the childhood environment and then it just gets relayed because of that habit of having to do it over and over again. It takes it into that adulthood, and then that adulthood, it can't see any other way of doing it but saying yes, because that's that safety mode and that protection mode.
Yeah.
So, how does somebody like realize or understand that they are in that mode?
So it kind of combines also with boundaries because if it's a process of learning about what we find acceptable and what we don't find acceptable. So this can happen, um, in a way that it kind of combines with the two learnings or what becoming aware of. Because the thing about boundaries is that, and this can be also applied with people pleasing, is that we start to bring awareness to our own needs, which of course will have been shut down. So this is the process where we have to start to check in with ourselves, bring some awareness to our bodily reactions. What's going on when I'm asked to do this thing? What's going on when somebody's turned up or about to turn up or text me to say, can I come and see you? But really, I didn't want to, but I'm still letting them. So you have to start feeling it in your body. Am I getting a funny feeling in the tummy? Is there a funny feeling in my feet? You know, you'll probably find there's a feeling in the body that's going on at the same time as you're saying something different to what you really want to be saying. So it's that lack of congruence or the lack of authenticity, that my mouth and my voice is saying this, but my body is feeling something else. And it's starting to become aware of that. So when we become aware of that, we can start to attempt to put in boundaries or voice our own needs. Two similar areas there.
Yeah. So it's almost like that saying, like, listen to your gut. That is literally listen to
Absolutely.
your gut feeling, because that is telling you the right thing to do. But then our patterns and our minds override that because of the habit that's been built in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So so for somebody to then, like, bring that conscious awareness to listening to the feelings, and then the stage from, like, just listening and then to be able to then implement that no, like, what would happen throughout that stage?
So that's where there'll likely be some discomfort. So when we say looking at feelings or checking in with feelings, we'll probably get another set of feelings that's around breaking that pattern. And those feelings could be like anxiety. So we might have gone from checking in with the gut. Do I feel okay about doing this or not? And then there could be a different set of feelings that come up. Like you might even get some anxiety around, I don't want to do this. I need to say no, but I'm gonna struggle with that. So the way that we would encourage to practice that would be choose safe people that you can start to learn to say no to. So they will be people that you know have enough empathy and consideration for your needs to be able to accept a no. And you might even want to check in with some safe people. So say you can think of one or two people that you can practice this with, and then you may even want to let them know that this is part of your journey. Your journey is going to be to practice saying no. And because you recognize that they're safe and they have empathy, they'd like it that if they could be that person for you, that you could start to practice that. I don't really want to do that. Would it be okay if I didn't? Would it be okay with you if I chose not to do that? So there are also ways of saying no, which take the pressure off that whole no, because no can be the biggest, hardest thing to say for people. So what we do is work out other ways of saying no. And that can be like, can you give me time to think about it? I'm going to need to check my diary and get back. I might have plans on that day. I need to check. All of those things are those sentences are perfectly acceptable to say to someone in order to give yourself time to process whether or not you want to do something. So it's about bringing that pause in, because we said, I said the automatic is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the automatic needs to be pause and consider the answer. And we find that that's also something that comes with people who, that's what I've noticed as well, is that often people are very speedy and work very quickly if they're from a place of lack of safety. And so bringing in a pause and bringing slower responses is actually a good practice anyway.
Yeah, so then it's not going from that extreme yes to no, which brings a load of other things that like guilt, like fear of, like, what will happen and all of that. So it's slowing down that process, allowing that thinking time,
Yeah.
and then and then going from there. Yeah, okay. So once that's so it's almost like removing the word yes from the vocabulary would be a good way to start,
Yeah.
and replacing it with some sentences that feel safe. So it's
Yeah.
finding safe sentences,
Yes.
and then from there that can then start the change, basically.
Definitely, like that, and that's what we do, isn't it? We think about the small steps so that, like, as you say, to not go from automatically saying yes to then turning that into a no. So this is something else that comes up quite a lot, is that in that process, unless we take it carefully and slowly, we can find that people become quite clunky with the no, and suddenly find, it's like with boundaries, suddenly find they're putting in great big boundaries in quite severely, which is again not really necessary, but it's that trying to go from yes to no, in and doing it in a gentle way, so that you don't end up with offending others and then getting into a negative consequence, which was unnecessary. Because if we just had a more brought more awareness to that, or some more another stage in it, which is like, I need to think about that, or can you give me a minute, or any of those things which are more gentle than no, definitely not, I'm not coming anywhere.
Mhm.
You know, that's another factor of this, is that we have to be aware that making those changes can actually bring out a bit of a dysregulated response, so it's a bit harsh, and that can be thought of as, well, that's actually quite clumsy or clunky because you're not used to it.
Yeah,
But
and
therefore,
also like you might be saying no to things that actually you want to do, but because you haven't like because you've gone from one extreme to the other, the yes to the no, you haven't given yourself that time to process and figure out, actually, is this something I want to be doing? Like, is this something that I feel safe doing? Is this something that I'm like saying no to because I feel like I have to say no because so there's a lot
yeah,
around it, isn't there?
there is a lot around it. So that's when tuning into the body is really important. So giving that time to tune into the body, um, because that's when you're gonna, because you don't want to miss out on experiences that you do want to do, and because then you're preventing a positive cycle happening then, aren't you? Because that's how we progress, isn't it? By saying yes to the right things, having a good time, and knowing how we can further our self-care in that way, or enjoy life more, which is again, another feedback in a positive way, doesn't it? Feedback.
Yeah.
So there's and something else that came up then when you said that, was I was thinking about, if somebody asks you whether or not you want to do something, you can always say, what's the deadline for letting you know, or how long before you need to know? Because that's often the pressure, isn't it? Is the thought that, well, because there's always going to be a good reason why somebody needs to know now. So if you can identify that, because that might be in your own mind, when in fact they don't need to know till later. Tickets to go and see something, well, do they have to be bought right now? Or do they have to be bought, or could it wait till later when I've processed it? Have I got enough money? Do I really want to go? You know?
Yeah. The other question as well, actually, I've just spun off of that is if you say if you've like thought about it and you say yes, I want to come to this event or this evening, and then it gets to that day and you don't want to go, that's still okay to change your mind and say no, isn't it?
We do have a right to change our mind. It's one of the basic human rights, yes. And of course, that's going to be, we'd still want to be mindful of the other in that, wouldn't we? So
Mm,
if somebody, if it was going to be a huge impact to the other person that you're not going, that would need to be managed carefully. So that's going to be depending on each situation. But
yeah.
absolutely, we have the right to change our minds. Yeah.
Yeah. And then again, bringing that conscious awareness to that situation, like you just said, if it's like meaningful for someone else, it's that process of it's almost like, or you could be like, yes, I can still come, but my energy is drained. I feel in like this, so I might not be 100%. Like, so it's
Mm,
almost like explaining where you're at, so then the other person understands.
that's it.
And then like if it's like a bigger thing where it's not really, it doesn't matter if you're there or not, it's easier just to say no and not have to worry about the consequences of that
Mm,
happening. So
yeah.
there is a lot of with the people pleasing, there is a lot of like guilt. And
Mm.
how does like one get around that or overcome that?
So guilt is often comes in. So often it's one of those it's one of those feelings that doesn't really have logic around it, because we can have guilt for things that we shouldn't feel guilty for or don't need to feel guilty for. And yet guilt comes in as a habit. So it's another one of those things that's part of like the people pleasing habitual yes. It will be followed also with, if you do say no, you'll get the guilt. I'm letting somebody down, and that's massive. That can be massive in your own head. So guilt is something that we have to learn to challenge, because it's there as a habit. Does it need to be there? That's the challenge. Do I need to be feeling guilt right now? Is this really appropriate? And that's, so something like CBT is good for challenging guilt, because CBT with the 7 thought column record sheet has a way of processing and using a structure with questions to sort of change that pattern thinking. And it's sort of the idea is with it is that you change negative automatic thoughts to positive ones, but you can also do something like this, which is bring guilt to that process. But that's a kind of therapy way of doing it. But we can take from that, which is how can I challenge that? What's an alternative way of looking at that? Is that guilt really appropriate there?
Yeah.
I'm aware I habitually feel guilt. Is it appropriate to feel it at that point? Sometimes it's about sitting with the discomfort of something, like the discomfort of putting in a boundary. You know, that will happen until we've practiced boundaries enough to feel more comfortable with them. But that's the work, is that it is becoming more practiced at these things, not kind of going, I don't do boundaries because, or I'm a people pleaser because, and that's that. It's actually, no, I can bring some challenge to that and change it.
Yeah. And that is true with anything in life. Like if something is needing to be changed, there's always going to be some level of discomfort, isn't there?
Mm.
And it's the more you can bring yourself to sit in this uncomfortable space,
Mm.
the more you're going to be able to build that strength, that resilience, like everything that comes with that. And then once you've gone through the discomfort of sitting in these spaces and getting to the other side and realizing the knock-on effects and the benefits of just
Mm.
being in that space for a moment of time, you almost want to find discomfort in other spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it becomes that challenge that you can actually enjoy,
Mm,
because the achievement out of it.
yeah, because of what you've overcome. Yeah.
Mm. So
Okay.
there's something I needed to add here, really, which was that I said choose someone safe about to practice these things with.
Mm,
What happens if somebody's in an abusive relationship, say, and the only way they're going to get out of it is by actually changing that dynamic and not being the people pleaser and putting in boundaries. So boundaries may look like the limit to this relationship. I don't want to be here anymore. So that's my limit, and I'm going to put things in place to change that. And that may well feel very uncomfortable, quite scary. It could literally be a risk as well. So we mustn't
mhm.
minimize that part. That's a
No.
whole nother series
Yeah,
of,
because everything is on the level, isn't it? So like
yeah,
the severity is on the severity of the situation. So
that's
what
right.
like so that's like probably my fault in wrong in that, because I had a vision in my head of playing out a scenario, but every scenario is going to be completely different, and every person's situation is going to be completely different. So yeah, like
That's
that
right.
discomfort is going to be excruciating for some people,
Yes.
but then on the other side of that, that freedom they're going to get from that
Yes.
is going to also
Yeah.
be, it's almost the polar opposite, isn't it? So coming,
Yes.
so the almost like the more severe of the situation, the more of that freedom that it's gonna like, and it's gonna be the simple things, isn't it, that's gonna really like it's, yeah, just looking at in the different contexts is and putting in that perspective and putting yourself in situations which you haven't experienced to understand, oh wow, like that is incredible to come from here to go from there, and that strength that took and that resilience and that like bravery, really, isn't it?
It is, and I agree with you about that. As severe it is, will be as sort of enlightened it could be, or the
Mm.
difference. But I do think there's also a tricky road in there. You know, the distance between there is tricky because
Yeah.
somebody could have levels of shock about having left, or adjustment not being needed in the same way, or not giving in the same way as they have done for all that time. It's those patterns that need to be changed.
Mhm.
Could be, it could contain an awful lot of other difficult feelings. So it's not as, yes, I'm sure by the end of the process, or nearing the end of the process, they'll start to feel those the freedom that they were looking for or never had.
Mhm.
But that would also, it might not be a straight line. It's not linear to get to that point. It's
Yeah.
going to be tricky. It's going to be a tricky path to navigate as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is literally with any situation, isn't it? There's always like a time frame that's in between the before and after, and
Mm,
that time frame is almost like one of those graphs that you're going to have like highs, lows, and you
mm,
have to go through those to almost like reach the other side, don't you?
yeah, yeah,
So it's almost put an expectation on, yes, this is going to be difficult,
yes,
and yes, there are going to be moments of high and there are going to be moments of low, and having that expectation of it going to be a challenge is going to help you when those challenges are faced. It's
yeah,
like almost like you get there and you're like, yeah, this is part of the process. I'm going to have to go through this. Yes, it's going to be hard,
mm,
but it's almost like that building of expectation, what's coming, what like so you're
that's it.
like
Yeah,
armored up for it, if that makes
that's
sense.
it, exactly. So managing expectations and recognizing with acceptance the road ahead is going to
Mhm.
be not just um the benefits of that immediate. It's not going to be an immediate benefit necessarily. It might be, but it might not be. It's like being prepared.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I think that covers quite a lot. Is there anything else you feel that needs to be added?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I do think there's a whole nother little thing on negative consequences of boundaries and changing dynamics of people pleasing,
Yeah,
because you know it's really important that those people that you choose to change your patterns with are going to be safe and not judgmental, because it, that would really set someone back if they try to put boundaries and differences in place on ways of behaving, and then they got a really negative consequence for it. So
yeah. Because then that's almost validating that they
that'll
can't do
validate.
it because like this is the outcome that I get from trying to do that. So that's why it's so important to have that safe space.
That's it.
And that's with any situation, isn't it? Like you're trying to
Yeah,
change, like having a safe environment or person or like
yeah,
system or
that's right.
process is needed,
Mm,
isn't it?
that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, shall we save like that for another, because
Hmm.
then it's all that, then it also goes into that like the mindset that you kind of have to carry with that and that self-talk and
That's
stuff,
it.
doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks for that. And yeah, we'll jump on for with another one.
Okay, thanks, George.